So what is enlightenment and how do we get there? I really love Eckhart Tolle's definition of enlightenment, which is consciousness that is liberated from identification with the mind or the body or the ego as a whole. And so that begs the question, what is consciousness? If consciousness liberated from the mind and the ego is enlightenment, then what is consciousness? So consciousness, according to him as well, is the state of awareness, pure awareness, without being identified with thought forms. So when you're just purely rooted in the natural, effortless awareness that is right here, right now, and you're not grabbing onto thought forms, that is a direct experience of pure consciousness. Because when you're really not identified with thought forms, when you really don't identify with a single thought that comes through, suddenly the whole world melts away. It's like if there's no interpretation of any of your five senses, whatever you're seeing, hearing, smelling, whatever, if those senses come in and there's zero identification with those thought forms, then there's no assumption that the world or a separate identity that's external to you even exists. There's just the arising of phenomena within consciousness and falling, but there's no identification or categorization or labeling of that experience as meaning anything. And so then all that remains is this pure awareness that is just aware of itself. And so consciousness being aware of itself without being attached to thought forms is what we call presence. So that's, you might have heard of his book, The Power of Now. That whole book is basically about the power of presence, which again, presence is consciousness liberated from identification with thought forms. So how do we become enlightened? The idea is that there's not so much something to do, but conditioning to undo. The enlightenment that we're seeking is here with us now, but in order to access it, we have to fully surrender out of our mind. We have to, like, if you imagine your thought forms are like the fruits of a tree, you need to suck your attention out of the fruits, down the trunk of the tree into the roots, and just let them flow out of the roots. So your consciousness is fully withdrawing out of the tree of your mind. And when that's left over, what's left over there is just consciousness being, period. It's just the existence of pure consciousness without identification with any thought forms, with any sense of ego. So really, enlightenment is the process of surrendering what you think you are so that you can rest as what you truly are. That was a bar. And so it's a practice. I don't make this video claiming to be fully aware of my own enlightened nature. I'm still learning. If there's something to do, the practice is learning how to surrender out of the mind, surrender out of thought. You can almost imagine this as like, how would you be in this moment if you didn't have a brain? But without thinking of how you would be without you had a brain, if you didn't have a brain, just how you would actually be if you didn't have a brain. You would have no thoughts. And you might say to that, Nico, if I try to ignore my thoughts just kind of keep coming forward even more furiously. It's like if someone tells you don't think of an elephant, of course you immediately think of an elephant. So it's impossible to sort of stop thinking. From the perspective of thinking, how do I stop thinking? It's an impossible game. It's more a game of just not wanting or needing anything from those thoughts. So you just disempower the thoughts. You make them uninteresting. It's like, oh yes, I'm very aware that this thought is arising and I'm not interested. And I continue to rest as consciousness. And so what happens as we practice this is that we start to be able to separate our consciousness from physical reality. And this is a useful form of discernment. It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy life as a physical human. It's just the practice of what they say in the Emerald Tablets is separating the fire from the earth. So the fire is your pure formless consciousness. The earth is the material world and your ego identification. Separating the fire from the earth is useful because it allows you to bask in the essence of what you truly are, which is consciousness, which is even beyond any form of description. Consciousness can easily just become a concept, but what are you when there are zero concepts and you're just pure being? So this is what all of the great sages throughout time have discovered. It is simply being without thought and plumbing the depths of that mystery. So obviously, if you're watching this video right now and you're thinking like, oh, I'm kind of trying to do this right now and it's not really working, give yourself a break, because you've probably spent your entire day in thinking mode. So you're not just going to immediately snap into this. I highly recommend sitting in meditation and just doing the exercise of allowing your consciousness to just become withdrawn from thoughts, become disinterested in thoughts, and let it just rest as pure being. And as you do that, you will start to enter naturally a state of realization, of actual knowing that you are not just your body, you are not just your mind, you are actually a formless awareness that transcends the entire physical world, that precedes the physical world, and that you are one with something very mysterious, something very sacred, something very present right here, right now, at all times. And that is your true nature. So that's how you access, that's a framework to becoming enlightened. And this is a practice ongoingly to become more and more connected day to day to the now, to your essence. I hope this was helpful. Much love. See you in the next one.